marriages and relationships are under severe attack. Part of the purpose of the enemy is to try to tear down the things of God. The Bible is very clear. The enemy only has really three aims. He wants to steal, kill, and destroy. And one of the things that the enemy vehemently wants to destroy is marriage because of the significance and power of marriage. Unfortunately, though, on the surface, if you look in the world and if you look in the church, it does look a little bit like the enemy's winning. Because statistically, in the world, over 60% of marriages right now are ending in divorce. And that number is not that much better in the church. The last stat I read suggests that about 55% of marriages in the church end in divorce. And part of the disconnect is not that God is not big enough to handle marriages, not that marriages have to end, but it's because often we try to lead our relationships and lead marriages in a way that is disconnected from the blueprint that God gives us. See, you got to know that God is the creator of marriages and relationships. But unfortunately, when it comes to how we exist in relationships and marriage, how we handle them, often we go to every other source except the creator to consult with him about how we're supposed to do marriage. Meaning that it's popular nowadays for us to go to every other source except the one who created it to find out how to do it.
And Jesus says, if two of you, a husband and a wife, if two of you will synchronize your faith in agreement towards something, my Father will do it. Now, I want you to listen to me. God makes promises for two of us that he doesn't make for one person by themselves. You say, why? Because God doesn't wants us to come together as couples, come together as families. The more we join our faith with other people, the more miracles God does. The devil's the one who wants us by ourselves. The wolf always goes for the stray sheep. The devil wants us isolated, off by ourselves, because that's where he can discourage us and just beat us to death. But if two of you would agree, symphonize together in faith, I'll do it. For where two or three are gathered together for my purposes, I'm right there in the midst of you. So every married couple can claim this right here. Now I want you to listen. I was in a meeting this week and I heard a statement that I've never heard before that I agree with. Now I want to share it with you. One of the people that was present in this meeting said, the devil attacks at the point of unity. He kind of said it in passing, because he was talking about their experience, because they're translating Bibles into languages all over the world. And he said, no, the devil attacks at the point of unity. And when he said that, I just thought, I totally agree. For example, in Genesis 2, God made Adam and Eve one. They two should become one. The word one means perfect unity. In Genesis 3, Satan attacked. And Adam and Eve became divided. Adam rejected Eve. They were separated, hiding behind fig leaves. Every time you see unity in the Bible, the devil will attack it. Listen to me. The devil attacks at the point of unity, but unity is how we overcome him. The unity of a husband and wife joining together in prayer, that's how you overcome the devil. Where two on earth come together, symphonize, and you agree together, you don't let the devil divide you. You don't let the devil attack you. You don't let the devil separate you. You come together as in agreement and you'll win every time. He attacks at the point of unity, but unity is how we overcome him.
A few years ago, there was a couple who came to me and they said, Pastor Van, we need to talk to you. I said, sure, what's going on? They said, well, we want to get a divorce. And I asked them, I said, well, okay, no, wait a minute. Let's sit down. Let's talk about this. What is the problem? And after listening for several hours, they said, so you can tell now that we've explained everything to you, it's clear, Pastor, that we've fallen out of love. And I said to them, I said, well, would you like me to just listen or would you like me to respond? They said, well, no, go ahead and respond. I said, well, respectfully, you haven't fallen out of love. You've just fallen out of focus. Meaning that you're at this impasse in your marriage because it's clear that you guys have been investing and you've been pursuing other things other than your marriage. So Jesus teaches this principle in Matthew 6:21. He says, for where your treasure is, there your heart is also. He literally is saying that wherever you make the deposits, wherever you make the investment, your heart is going to follow. So if you are pursuing the corporate ladder, if that's where you're making all of the investments, then guess what? That's where your heart is going to be. If you are pursuing a certain status in life, if you are pursuing a certain income and a certain lifestyle, if that is what you are pursuing, that's where you're making the deposits. And guess what? Your heart is going to be there. And so with this couple, what I said to them is, it's not necessarily that you have fallen out of love. It's just that for the last several years, you all have been pursuing different things. That's where your heart is. So the whole point that I want you to understand with this is that love is not just a product of emotions and chemistry. Love is a product of work. Think back to your first date with your spouse. Or if you're single and you've been in love before and been head over heels with someone before, think back to your first date with them. Think about how hard you worked to try to impress them. Think about, no, come on now, be real. Think about how much time you spent trying to impress them. I remember when my wife and I went on our first date. This is kind of corny, but our first date, we went to church. Yeah? We went to hear this evangelist, and then we went to dinner. And I remember I spent more time figuring out what I was going to wear and washing the car than we actually spent on the date. Think about all of the work that went into that date, right? Think about how careful you chose your words. You're like, oh, no, I don't want to say it that way because then I don't want them to think a certain way. Think about how much energy you exerted trying to serve them, right, fellas? I mean, you ran around the side, opened the door, and tried to act like you do that all the time, right? All of that work was why you fell in love in the first place. See, marriage is like a muscle. If you keep working the muscle, it gets stronger and it gets better. But if you stop working the muscle, it atrophies and it begins to fall apart. God looks at Adam, he looks at Eve, he says that it is good. But God creates them for one another, not to complete each other, but to complement each other. Right? Because you can accomplish more together. There's another dimension of favor. There's another dimension of productivity. There's another dimension of blessing. There's another dimension of peace that you have in the marriage that you do not have when you are by yourself. This is even why in Ecclesiastes 4, it literally says 2 are better than 1.
Amen.
Because they have a good return for their labor. Even in what you're working towards. Listen to me. You can get there faster. You get more of a return for your labor when you work together than when you work by yourself.
Yes.
It says, if either of them falls down, one can help each other. But pity the one who falls and has nobody to help them. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. And let me tell you, I for many years did not know this. As a kid growing up, I wanted to have a successful marriage. I honestly did, but I feared marriage. My wife and I actually started on separate ends of the spectrum. 40 plus years. So that was my wife's reality. My reality was the exact opposite. My mother and father divorced when I was 6 months old. So I have no memory of my father being in the house, and my mom, unfortunately, has been married multiple times. And that was really the pattern I saw in my family. I didn't grow up with images of healthy marriages. And so I wanted to be married, but I was afraid. I was fearful. Didn't know whether or not I could do it the right way because I was looking at the world's definition. I was looking at the world's standards. But everything changed when I began to do it and to understand that God set it up by these undeniable laws. Yeah. So there's the law of priority. It's got 4 aspects, and I keep stressing this because I want you to get it. Because when we do it God's way, it helps not only to make the marriage and the relationship what it can be, but it brings so much more, the fulfillment and the peace and the purpose that God had originally intended. So you've got the law of priorities broken into 4 aspects. You got to have the right priority with God, the right priority with your spouse. You got to have the right priority in your pursuits. But then here's the 4th one and final one. You've got to also have the right priority in your possessions. The whole point is anything that you will not share with your spouse,
yes,
you are literally saying to them that you are not nearly as important to me as that thing is.
Your phone codes, your computer codes. If you can't share it, it's not important.
It will damage the trust,
Yes.
and you communicate every single time that you are not nearly as important and you're not nearly as much of a priority in my life as that thing is. But one of the questions that I raise to singles is, have you divorced yourself yet? Because often if you haven't divorced yourself and you're not willing to share, then you can get married and your marital status can change,
Right.
but you still will live single. You will live like basically roommates if you're not willing to share. From the very beginning, God is teaching us that marriage involves work. As a matter of fact, you know how you spell marriage? W-O-R-K. That's how you spell marriage. Marriage only works when both spouses work at it and zealously pursue each other and cling to one another. Marriages will begin to break down because of a lack of work. The moment you begin to take each other for granted, the moment that you put your marriage on cruise control, is the moment that the marriage begins to break down. Doing it God's way works.
Right.
Let me say that again. Doing it God's way works.
2 works better than 1.
2
Are
is better than 1. So notice the order. God makes Adam, which allows God and Adam to have their time together. Then God puts Adam to sleep and creates Eve. This allows God and Eve to have their time together. Then the Bible says that God wakes Adam up and he brings Adam and Eve together.
So this process is very interesting because, like Pastor stated in Genesis, God and Adam, they have their time alone, right? They spend time together, and then God put Adam to sleep. Adam rested. He rested in Christ. He rested in the process. So God put Adam to sleep. He rested. And then now we have Eve. He created Eve, and he had an opportunity to spend time with Eve alone. And as I look back even in my own personal life, being a single woman before being married to this wonderful man, I realize now that my time with Christ, with God, was such a pivotal time for me personally. It allowed me to be loved by God. It allowed me to learn his voice before I learned anybody else's and listen to everyone else. And it also it helped me to trust God's timing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you're single, you're trying to rush things and you're trying to do things on your own. So it's just trusting God's timing. And so now you have time. You have Adam, who spent time with God alone. Then you have Eve now, who's spending time alone with God. But what is Adam doing?
He's resting.
He's still resting. So you picture this. Adam's asleep. Eve is spending time with Christ. So in this time, she has to also trust God in her time because she's trusting that God will wake him up in due time. And God is the one who woke Adam up. It wasn't Eve prematurely waking Adam up outside of the timing of Christ.
That's good.
So you have to be sure, ladies, I'm going to speak to single ladies, not to prematurely wake up your Adams.
Marriage is to be a complete union of all of the things that were previously owned and managed separately. They are now supposed to be owned and managed jointly. And let me say this to you. There are no exceptions. Anything that a spouse, listen to me, anything that a spouse is unwilling to merge into the marriage violates this rule.
You guys need to be on one accord.
Come on.
And then also you have relationships that can cause divisions. And when I say relationships, before you get married, you can have all the friends in the world, right? You have a guy BFF, you have all these friends, but once you get into the marriage, if you cannot transfer or kind of create and merge that friendship, it's not going to be healthy in your marriage.
It's so good.
It's not.